Hey everybody, my name is Pash. I'm just sitting up here in my loft reading a book that I helped research and create. I run Pashco Posters and the Rock Poster Art Group on Facebook. You know, reading this book reminds me that I want to tell you about a couple things. From 1969 to 1970, an unprecedented series of music shows was presented in this stately building, which was southeast of Minneapolis. It was called the Labor Temple, Minneapolis Labor Temple. And there was nearly 50 weekly dance concerts that were modeled after the San Francisco Fillmore Auditorium concerts. And these took place in a ballroom on the top stories of that building. There's a beautiful theater that you'll hear about. And these shows usually featured leading international American and English acts like, who was there? Grateful Dead, Jeff Beck with Rod Stewart, Savoy Brown, the Youngbloods, Johnny Winter, the Byrds. And then the opening acts were drawn from the rising tide of local musicians such as like Joker's Wild was a Twin Cities band, Mojo Buford, Kerner and Buford, Thunder Tree. But it also featured, sometimes the opening acts were really large acts like Alice Cooper. And there were a series of psychedelic light shows, not unlike the light shows like by the Holy See and by the Joshua Light Show in San Francisco. And those light shows were created by a group called the Community News. And of course, every one of those concerts was accompanied by clouds of marijuana smoke and a lot of fun, right? You know, an essential element of those concerts, of course, were the very colorful posters designed by the speaker that you're going to hear about in this video. His name is Juryj Ostroushko. We call him George. He was a budding commercial artist who went to San Francisco and brought back his sketchbook from a trip there. He was influenced by Moscoso, Kelly, Griffin, Mouse, right? And Juryj's hand-lettered typography includes a font actually that he created that's still in use today, right? A really cool psychedelic font. So now these iconic posters that were created to advertise the event, they were printed in very, very small quantities. And as usual, they were posted in the shops and the windows on telephone poles. And of course, nobody ever kept those posters in those days, right? And it made them really particularly scarce today. An important part of Minnesota's music history is what those posters are now, right? The posters and the concerts are documented in this book, right? This is a collection of Labor Temple. This documents the largest collection of Labor Temple concerts and posters in the world. And I worked on this book, funded it, did the research on it. Matter of fact, during my research, I gathered the largest collection of Labor Temple posters in the world. And recently I worked with the Minneapolis Public Library, who now owns that collection, right? So let's get on to the video. I think you're going to enjoy this. The book all started a few years back when I met Juryj after researching him. I had purchased one of his posters, the very first one, at a VFW record show. And I wanted to know more, so I started to research him, and I found him actually living in Minneapolis. And we got together, and a few hours after him telling me his story and showing me these posters, I started to shake him. I'm like, Juryj, George, I said, we gotta write a book. And to this day, few people know about these concerts or the rare posters, right? They really are a vital chapter in the long and rich history of Minnesota music. And what you're going to hear next is an event that we created, hosted at Famous Dave's in Uptown Minneapolis, where we launched this book. And we had the artist speak about that very first concert at the grand opening of the Labor Temple, none other than the Grateful Dead. So sit back, relax, as we join Juryj, George, as he's just sitting down in front of the audience and he begins to tell his story of that night. Listen in.
And you find a spot on the floor and you take a look around the auditorium. fantastic Victorian auditorium with a stage that was ornate, windows on both sides of the auditorium with ledges on them that just screamed, "I'm a bench, come sit on me." But you decide to sit on the floor. You find a spot right in the middle. You carve yourself out a little spot, and you're sitting there. No sooner do you make yourself comfortable when the first joint comes being passed around. And you take a quick hit and you pass it on, because that's what hippies did. They shared. You knew that it was going to come back around again sooner or later anyway. So, as the crowd swells, and you get to know some of your neighbors sitting next to you, sitting around you, and the crowd is becoming quite agitated because the band is running late. I mean, back then, we didn't have a whole lot of control of what was going on. It just kind of happened. And the Dead were running late that night, and the crowd was getting really antsy. So Charlie Campbell, I can say the name. I don't think you get arrested now, Charlie. He climbed up above the auditorium and was dropping freshly rolled joints into the crowd through the air vents. And as one end of the auditorium just went into a frenzy because they saw floating doobies, then it went to the other end. People were just raising their arms up as if they were waiting for this magic potion to come down into their lap. And after a while, someone started to announce the band on stage. And the Dead went right into it because they were running late. I don't remember, I hear various stories. Again, I was there, but I wasn't there. Part of me was there. And I could tell that the crowd just was waiting. They were anticipating this unbelievable show. They knew it was going to be great. And the Grateful Dead break in with Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. And the crowd just went nuts. It was amazing. I can't explain. I've been to many concerts in my day. But I don't think anything at any venue I've ever been to was quite like what the Temple was. You were close to the stage. Everyone knew one another. We were all, at that time, basically living the same type of lifestyle. And we knew how to party hardy. And so as the band started playing, and the crowd was getting more and more excited, you could tell that the folks didn't want to just sit and listen to music, that this was something that maybe we had dreamed about in the beginning, that to try to make our venue more like something that San Francisco had offered, like the Avalon and the Fillmore and the Winterland and Longshoremen's Hall. And the light show was playing right along with the band. I mean, it was the music and the light show that was in unison here. And as a multitude of colored gels, oils, moire effects created images of flowing enchantment, only that someone could imagine in the land of Oz was this possible. We had never seen anything like this in the Twin Cities before. And the band flowed freely from one tune to the next, and believe me, my memory doesn't allow me to remember the songs that they played in order. But as the band finished up with their set that night, their first set, they'd be coming out for a second, the crowd started getting up and stretching their legs, maybe heading for the restrooms. But the one thing that the Temple did is that in the intermissions we didn't stop. The light show folks broke out the 16 millimeters, and we were showing on two white screens on either end of the stage. We were showing on one end cartoons, classic cartoons, Betty Boop, Felix the Cat. There you go, Buddy the Pup. And on the other side, it's King Kong climbing up the Empire State Building with Fay Ray dangling from his grip as he swats fighter planes swirling around his head. And just as the crowd is coming to grips of the ape falling to his death, the groans turn to cheers as the Dead are back on stage for its second set. They kick it off with cold rain and snow. I don't know, maybe it was a comment on the Minnesota weather. And the audience, no longer sitting, is now jumping, dancing, gyrating to the music and lights, as if all inhibitions and worries have been lifted off their shoulders. The band flows into The Other One. Yes, that's a tune, it's not the other song. Before it comes to a crescendo ending with Turn On Your Love Light, and Pigpen literally bringing everyone to their knees, and then to rousing cheers as the clock tolls 12:30, the dreaded curfew. See, when we had met with Dave Anthony, he said there were two things that at the Labor Temple the city wanted us to do. They wanted us to put up chairs, which of course immediately took us from a crowd of 3,000 people to around 1,250 people. And they wanted us to stop at 12:30 sharp, because the Labor Temple was in kind of a residential area. And there were a lot of older folks that lived there. But did we stop that night? No. The crowd, still standing and cheering, urges the Dead to play on, and the Dead didn't disappoint as they do a rendition of Walk Me Out in the Morning Dew, My Honey. And as the clock strokes 1 a.m., the music finally comes to a halt, and the crowd, begrudgingly, no one wants to leave, they find their way towards the exit, still feeling the effects of what they had just experienced. The music, the lights, the smells would leave a lasting impression for days and weeks to come. And as the din faded away that night, we, the community news, felt a feeling of accomplishment, that we had done something that no one else had done in the Twin Cities area. And it was pretty special. And for the next year and a half, Sundays at the temple were always special, because we went from the Dead, we went to Jethro Tull, we went to 10 Years After and the Byrds, and Sweetwater, the Byrds. I mean, I think everyone planned their weeks around the Labor Temple then. That they knew that every Sunday they knew exactly where they were going to be. And they knew they were going to be treated to one hell of a show and possibly a doobie floating in midair. You just never knew what you were going to get. And that was the first night of the Labor Temple. The posters that Paul Pashko Posters is offering at auction are the last existing imprints of these concerts, and have been carefully stored in my portfolios for years, to 46 years to be exact. I never thought that they were ever worth the paper they were printed on, and I certainly felt that the posters basically reminded me of where I came from. Now, I know that there are a lot of these posters still out there. Shoot, Woody showed up with some tonight that I didn't even know people still had. So there are posters out there, but like I say, for me, it was a way of remembering my past. And I am a pack rat, so I keep everything. And for a kid who grew up in Northeast Minneapolis, to a family that came here from Europe on a last boat to Ellis Island, I feel honored and blessed that this took me all the way to Dave's barbecue.